The drifting ship hung in the black like a dead thing. No lights, no signals, just cold metal and frozen air, tumbling slowly through the void near the edge of human space. Inside, the air was thin and sharp with the smell of burnt wiring and old fear. A handful of beings huddled together in what used to be the command deck. Their skin was gray-blue, stretched tight over sharp bones. Their eyes, large, dark, and rimmed with silver, stayed fixed on the cracked viewport, watching the distant pinpricks of stars that offered no help. They were the last of the Virel. Once their world had sung with cities that climbed into the clouds and ships that wove between stars like threads of light. Now they were ghosts, hunted, branded. The galaxy had called them void-tainted, cursed for a war they didn't start and a crime they didn't commit. Every system they'd begged for shelter had slammed its gates shut. Some fired warning shots. Others opened fire without warning. One by one, their fleet had been picked apart until only this broken vessel remained. Their life support was failing. Oxygen levels dropped with every passing hour. Water recyclers had frozen solid days ago. Hunger gnawed at their bellies, but thirst was worse. The youngest among them, a child named Tay, sat curled against a bulkhead, eyes closed, breathing shallow. Their small hands trembled. An elder, Nessa, wrapped a thin thermal blanket around them, though it offered little warmth. She whispered old songs in their native tongue, words that meant safe and home, though neither existed anymore. They had tried everything, sent distress calls in a dozen alien dialects, broadcast coordinates, offered trade, knowledge, even surrender. Silence answered every plea. Then one of the younger refugees, Joran, remembered something. During their long flight, they had intercepted human broadcasts, news reports, music, even children's stories. Humans spoke a language called Standard Terran, simple, direct. Maybe, just maybe, humans would listen where others had not. With the last of their power, they patched together a transmitter. Joran, hands shaking, typed out a message in broken Terran, using symbols they'd memorized from old broadcasts. It read, "Help, we are not enemies. We have nowhere else to go. Please." They sent it on an open frequency aimed toward the nearest known human patrol zone. Then they waited. Minutes stretched into hours. Hope, fragile as glass, began to crack. Nessa held Tay tighter. Joran stared at the dead comms panel, his shoulders slumping. Far away, aboard the deep-range salvage tug Wayfarer, Captain Elias Rourke was reviewing cargo manifests when the alert chimed. Not a standard distress call. This was raw, unencrypted, and in clumsy Terran. He frowned, replaying the message twice. It sounded desperate, real. His co-pilot, a grizzled engineer named Dax, leaned over. Probably a prank or a trap. You know how the belt pirates love mimicking refugee signals. Rourke didn't answer right away. He pulled up the signal's origin. A derelict signature drifting near the Kuiper edge. No ID, no transponder, just a ghost on the scope. But the message, it didn't feel like a trick. It felt like someone running out of time. Scan shows minimal power, Dax added. If it's real, they're already dead or close to it. Rourke rubbed his jaw. Protocol was clear. Report to Earth Command, await orders. No unsanctioned contact with unknown vessels, especially not near the frontier. But something in that broken message tugged at him. He'd seen war. He'd seen people turned away at borders while cities burned behind them. He knew what it meant to have no one left to ask. Change course, he said quietly. Full burn toward the signal. Dax stared. Elias, you're risking your license. Maybe your neck. Then I'll risk it, Rourke said, his voice firm. Because if that's real and we do nothing, what does that make us? The Wayfarer turned, engines flaring blue against the dark. It took 12 hours to reach the derelict. As they drew closer, Rourke saw the damage. Plasma scarring along the hull, shattered viewports, debris trailing like a comet's tail. No signs of life, no movement. Just silence. He suited up, Dax reluctantly following. They docked with magnetic clamps and cut through a sealed hatch. Inside, the air was so cold their breath fogged instantly. Gravity was off. They floated through dark corridors littered with frozen supplies and broken equipment. Then in the command deck they found them, 5 Virelians, thin, exhausted, eyes wide with fear and disbelief as the humans entered. They didn't reach for weapons. They didn't speak. They just watched as if seeing ghosts. Rourke raised his hand slowly, palms out. We're not here to hurt you. he said in clear, slow Terran. "We got your message." Nessa stepped forward, shielding Tay behind her. She pointed to the child, then to her own chest, then made a weak gesture toward the humans. Her voice was a rasp. "Safe?" Rourke nodded. "Yes, safe. He activated his suit comm. Dax, prep the med bay. Full life support. We've got survivors." As they helped the Varel onto stretchers, Rourke noticed something odd. Tay's eyes weren't just tired. They shimmered faintly like oil on water, and near where the child had been sitting, a loose bolt floated in midair, unmoving, as if held by invisible hands. Rourke blinked. When he looked again, it had fallen to the floor. He said nothing. But as the Wayfarer turned toward Luna's orbital way station, Haven 7, a quiet unease settled in his gut. These refugees weren't just running from war. They were carrying something the galaxy feared enough to destroy entire worlds over. And now, by offering them shelter, humanity had just stepped into the storm. The orbital way station, Haven 7, hung in silent orbit around Earth's moon, a ring of steel and glass lit by the cold glow of distant stars. Inside, the air hummed with the quiet rhythm of life support, recycled air and the low murmur of 100 different languages. It was a place of truce where humans and aliens traded goods, settled disputes, and sometimes, just sometimes, offered each other kindness. Captain Elias Rourke guided the Varel refugees through the medical bay doors, their gray-blue skin still pale from cold and hunger. Station Administrator Mara Lynn met them there, arms crossed, expression unreadable. She was a woman who had seen too many crises and made too many hard calls. Her dark eyes scanned the refugees quickly, then settled on Rourke. "You brought them here," she said, not as a question. "They had nowhere else to go," Rourke replied. "Their ship was dead. They sent a plea in Terran. I couldn't ignore it." Mara exhaled slowly. She knew the rules. Haven 7 was neutral ground, but it answered to Earth Command. Harboring unknown aliens, especially ones labeled void-tainted by the Celestial Concord, was a serious breach. But she also saw the child, Tay, barely able to stand, held up by an elder whose hands shook with exhaustion. She saw no weapons, no threat. Just survivors. Temporary asylum, she said at last. 72 hours. Medical care, food, rest. After that, Earth Command decides their fate. Rourke nodded. It wasn't much, but it was something. The refugees were moved to a sealed quarantine wing, partly for safety, partly for observation. Within hours, word spread. A Varel ship had been found. Humans had taken them in. The news traveled faster than light through diplomatic channels. By the next morning, a sleek silver vessel, sleek as a blade and twice as sharp, docked at Haven 7's diplomatic bay. Its hull bore the sigil of the Celestial Concord, a ring of stars encircling a single eye. Out stepped Kale Vor, Concord envoy. Tall, pale, with eyes like polished stone, and a voice that cut through air like ice. He demanded an immediate audience with Administrator Lynn. In her office, surrounded by floating data screens and soft lunar light, Vor wasted no time. "You are sheltering the void-tainted," he stated, not asked. "This violates Galactic Accord 47B. They are not refugees. They are carriers of a biocognitive plague. Their very presence risks every sentient being in this system." Mara kept her voice calm. "They're exhausted, starving, and unarmed. They showed no signs of disease. Our med scans came back clean." "Your scans are primitive," Vor said coldly. "The corruption is not physical. It spreads through thought, through proximity. The Varel opened a rift during their last stand, a rift that should never have been touched. They were supposed to be erased." "Not rescued," Mara leaned forward. "So you hunted them across star systems. To kill them for something they didn't understand?" "They were warned," Vor replied. "Now you must surrender them immediately, or Earth will be held accountable for harboring a galactic threat." Mara refused. She cited humanitarian law, human sovereignty, and the simple fact that no evidence of danger had been presented. Vor left without another word, but his eyes promised consequences. That night, strange things began to happen in the quarantine wing. Lights flickered without cause. Tools floated off tables and hung in mid-air before clattering to the floor. One of the station's maintenance bots veered off course and hovered near Tay's room for nearly an hour, unresponsive to commands. Security footage showed nothing unusual, just the child sitting quietly, staring at their hands. But when engineers reviewed the station's gravity sensors, they found localized distortions around Tay's quarters. Tiny pockets where up and down didn't apply. Mara called Rourke. What did you bring aboard, Elias? I don't know, he admitted. But they're not dangerous. Not on purpose. Before they could investigate further, alarms blared through Haven 7. A Concord patrol ship stationed just outside the way station had fired a misaligned targeting laser. It struck docking ring Gamma, right where the Varel's old ship was stored. The explosion wasn't large, but it breached the outer hull. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, saving lives, but the message was clear. The Concord wasn't asking anymore. Mara's face hardened. She ordered the Varel moved to a secure inner sector, doubled security and locked down all external comms. Then she did something no one expected. She accessed the station's public broadcast system. Attention all personnel and guests. Her voice echoed through every corridor. What you've heard about the Varel is lies. They are not monsters. They are survivors. And they came to us in good faith. If the Concord wants them, they'll have to go through us. The announcement sent shockwaves through the station. Human workers cheered. Some alien traders packed up and left, fearing war. Others stayed, watching, waiting. Later that night, Mara and Rourke found Tay wandering the hydroponics bay, a quiet, green-lit chamber filled with growing plants and recycled air. The child stood in the center, eyes closed, arms outstretched. Around them, water droplets hung in the air like tiny stars. The air shimmered. And for a brief moment, the wall seemed to dissolve. In that shimmer, images flickered like ghosts in glass. A blue-green world burning. Towers of light collapsing. Beings in conquered armor opening a great gate in space, and something vast and shapeless pouring through. The Varel didn't fight the conquered. They fought to close that gate. They sealed it with their own bodies, their minds, their very souls. The taint wasn't a disease. It was a shield. A living lock. Tay collapsed. Rourke caught them before they hit the floor. Mara stared at the fading images, her heart pounding. The conquered hadn't been trying to stop a plague. They'd been trying to hide their mistake. And now, by protecting the Varel, Haven 7, and Earth, had become targets not just of war but of truth. She made her choice then. Not as an administrator, not as a diplomat, but as a human. She walked to the comms room, opened every channel, Earth, Mars, the belt, even pirate nets, and sent the raw sensor logs from the hydroponics bay. The truth, unfiltered. Let the galaxy see what the conquered had done. Let them decide who the real monsters were. Within minutes, replies flooded in.
Some called her a traitor.
Others called her brave. But one thing was certain. The quiet peace of Haven 7 was over. The storm had arrived, and humanity, by offering shelter, had just become its eye. Tension filled Haven 7 like smoke after a fire. The station's corridors, once busy with traders and travelers, now echoed with the heavy steps of armed guards. Humans in gray uniforms patrolled every junction. Alien diplomats kept to their quarters. The air smelled of ozone and fear. Administrator Mara Lynn hadn't slept in 2 days. She sat in her dim office watching live feeds from every corner of the station. Outside, 3 Concord warships hung in silent formation, their weapons powered but not yet aimed. They were waiting, watching, testing. Inside, chaos simmered. The broadcast she'd sent, the truth about the Varel and the Concord's secret, had torn the human worlds apart. Earth Command demanded she hand over the refugees immediately. The Martian Free Colonies declared full support for Haven 7. The Belt Alliance sent fighters to the edge of Sol space, just in case. Humanity, for the first time in decades, was split. But the real danger wasn't outside. It was inside the station, in the small room where Tay slept. The child's condition had worsened. Their breathing came in short gasps. Their skin pulsed with a faint silver light. Every few hours, gravity in their room twisted. Tools floated, water rose in spirals, and once a whole section of the wall bent inward like soft clay before snapping back. The Varel elders whispered in their own tongue, faces grim. They knew what was happening. Tay wasn't just remembering the past. They were reliving it, and their mind was unraveling under the weight. Rourke stood guard outside the room, arms crossed, eyes tired but alert. He'd refused to leave. They trusted us, he'd told Mara. I won't let them down. Late that night, alarms blared, not from the outer hull, but from deep within the station. Security feeds showed Concord agents in civilian clothes moving through Maintenance Sector 9. They weren't here to talk. They carried neural disruptors, weapons designed to erase memories. Or stop hearts. Mara ordered lockdown. Bulkheads slammed shut. Lights dimmed to emergency red. But it was too late. The agents had already reached Hydroponics Bay, the same place where Tay had shown the vision of the Varel homeworld. Rourke and a squad of station security raced there. They found the Concord team planting charges near the main oxygen recyclers. A firefight erupted in the green-lit gloom. Laser bolts sizzled through rows of wheat and algae tanks. One of Rourke's men went down, clutching his side. But the Concord agents weren't trying to win. They were trying to draw attention. While the fight raged, Tay vanished from their room. Mara's blood ran cold. She knew where the child would go. She ran to Hydroponics Bay, arriving just as the last Concord agent fell. Rourke was already searching the rows of plants, calling Tay's name. Then they saw it. A soft glow deep in the bay near the old root chamber. They followed the light. Tay stood in the center of the room, eyes wide open, unblinking. Around them, the air warped. Plants bent toward the child like they were bowing. Water from broken pipes hung in the air, forming strange shapes, cities, ships, faces. And in the center of it all, a shimmering window opened in the air. Through it, they saw the final moments of the Varel world. Not a battle. Not an attack. A sacrifice. The Concord had drilled into a dead star's core, seeking power. Instead, they woke something ancient, a being made of hunger and silence, older than galaxies. It began to consume reality itself. The Varel didn't fight it with weapons. They used their own biology, their minds, their souls to weave a living seal, a bioresonant field that trapped the entity in a pocket of folded space. To do it, they had to absorb fragments of the entity's essence. That was the taint, not a curse. A vaccine. The Concord, ashamed and afraid, blamed the Varel, called them infected, hunted them so no one would learn the truth. As the vision faded, Tay collapsed. Rourke caught them just in time. The child's skin was ice cold. Their breath came in shallow hitches. One of the Varel elders, Nessa, rushed in, tears streaking her gray cheeks. She knelt beside Tay and placed a hand on their chest. "The anchor weakens," she whispered in broken Terran. "The seal. It needs a host. Tay is too young. Too fragile." Mara understood. "You mean someone has to carry this thing inside them?" Nessa nodded. "To keep it sleeping. To stop it from waking again." Before anyone could speak, the station shook. Not from an explosion, from something deeper. A low hum filled the air, vibrating in their bones. The lights flickered wildly. On the main display screen, a new alert flashed. Deep space sensors had picked up a massive energy surge near the galactic core. A rift was opening, and it was growing. The entity was stirring. Panic spread through Haven 7. Earth Command sent a final order. Expel the Varel within the hour, or be declared in violation of galactic peace. The Concord ships powered up their main cannons. But Vor sent a private message to Mara, his voice no longer cold, now desperate. "The seal is breaking," he said. "Billions are already lost in the core systems. We were wrong. We need the Varel. We need their knowledge, please. Help us." Mara looked at Tay, small and trembling in Rourke's arms. She looked at the Varel who had lost everything but still offered their truth. She looked at the humans around her, scared, divided. But still standing. She made her choice. She opened every communication channel again, not just to human worlds, but to every known species in the Concord. The Belt, the free colonies, even pirate nets and rogue stations. She broadcast the full vision, the sensor logs, Nessa's testimony, and Vor's plea. She didn't ask for permission. She showed the truth and let others decide. Within minutes, replies poured in. A Martian science vessel offered to take the Varel to Ceres. A Belt freighter volunteered as escort. Even a few non-conquered alien factions sent messages of support. The galaxy was waking up, but time was running out. The rift was spreading, and Tay couldn't hold the seal much longer. Mara turned to Rourke. "Get them to Ceres now. I'll hold the Concord off as long as I can." Rourke nodded. He lifted Tay gently. Nessa and the others gathered their few belongings. As they moved toward the docking bay, the station trembled again. This time it felt like the universe itself was holding its breath. They weren't just refugees anymore. They were the last hope, and the shelter humans offered might be the only thing standing between the galaxy and the void. The Wayfarer shuddered as it broke free of Haven 7's docking clamps. Outside, the stars were no longer peaceful. 3 conquered warships hung like wolves in the dark, their hulls bristling with weapons. But they didn't fire, not yet. They watched as the small salvage tug turned its nose toward the asteroid belt. Toward Ceres, toward the only place in human space that still offered open arms. Captain Elias Rourke sat in the pilot's seat, hands steady on the controls. Behind him, the Varel refugees huddled in the cargo hold, wrapped in thermal blankets. Tay lay on a medical cot, breathing slowly, their small chest rising and falling like a wounded bird's. Nessa stayed close, humming a soft Varel lullaby that seemed to calm the child's restless energy. Dax, the engineer, leaned over Rourke's shoulder, eyes on the rear sensors. Concord's not moving, he muttered. That's not good. They're waiting for something. Rourke didn't answer. He knew why. Earth Command had ordered all human vessels to stand down. No help would come from Sol. The Wayfarer was alone. But the Belt Alliance had promised cover near the asteroid fields. If they could just reach that maze of rock and ice, they might disappear long enough to make it to Ceres. The journey began in silence. The ship's engines hummed softly. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Every beep from the console made someone flinch. Every shadow in the corridor seemed to move. Then, halfway to the belt, the first hunter appeared. It came out of nowhere, a sleek, black Concorde interceptor, fast and silent. It didn't hail them. It fired. Plasma bolts streaked past the Wayfarer, missing by meters. Rourke yanked the controls hard to port. The ship groaned in protest, but it held. Dax scrambled to the weapons panel. Just 2 old railguns, barely legal for salvage work. He fired back. One shot clipped the interceptor's wing. The ship veered off, but more would come. They're testing us, Rourke said through gritted teeth. Seeing how far we'll run, he pushed the engines harder. The Wayfarer wasn't built for speed, but it was tough. It had survived scrapyards and salvage runs through dead zones. Now it carried something more precious than metal. It carried hope. As they neared the asteroid belt, strange things began happening again. Lights flickered. The ship's artificial gravity wavered. In the cargo hold, loose tools floated for a few seconds before crashing down. Tay was awake now, eyes wide, staring at the ceiling as if seeing something no one else could. Nessa placed a hand on the child's forehead. The rift grows, she whispered. The seal. It trembles. Rourke heard her over the comm. His stomach tightened. If the entity broke free now, there'd be no stopping it. Not here, not anywhere, then a miracle. A hail came through on a private frequency. It was Captain Vela of the belt freighter Iron Mule. Rourke, we're here. Follow my lead. Ahead, a cluster of large asteroids parted like curtains. Hidden among them were 3 belt ships, old miners and haulers retrofitted with armor and weapons. They formed a protective ring around the Wayfarer. For a few hours, they were safe. The belt crew shared food, water, and spare parts. They told Rourke that Ceres was ready, domes reinforced, labs prepped, med teams standing by. But the Concorde wouldn't let them reach it easily. Sure enough, as they exited the belt, a massive shape blocked their path. A Concorde dreadnought, 10 times the size of the Wayfarer. Its hull gleamed like polished bone. Weapons ports glowed red-hot. This wasn't a hunter. This was a death sentence. Rourke's hands tightened on the controls. Dax cursed under his breath. Even the belt ships fell silent. The dreadnought didn't fire. Instead, a message came through, clear, calm, and unexpected. This is High Commander Vor of the Celestial Concorde vessel, Eternal Watch. We do not seek battle. We seek aid. Rourke exchanged a look with Dax. Vor? The same envoy who had demanded the Virel be handed over. The screen flickered. Vor's face appeared, pale, exhausted, his usual coldness gone. The rift has consumed the core worlds, he said, voice raw. Trillions lost. Our fleets are shattered. The entity, it feeds on fear, on chaos. It grows stronger with every mind it consumes. The Virel seal is the only thing that ever held it back. We were wrong to hunt them. We beg you, let us help. Let us stand with you. Silence filled the cockpit. Rourke looked back at the cargo hold. At Tay, small and fragile. At Nessa, who nodded slowly. He opened a channel. You hunted them like animals. You burned their world. Why should we trust you now? Because we have nothing left to lie about, Vor replied. And because if you fail, none of us will be left to remember the truth. Rourke made his choice. He ordered the belt ships to hold position. Then slowly he guided the Wayfarer toward the dreadnought's open bay. Inside the massive ship, they were met not with weapons, but with medics and scientists. Concorde engineers worked alongside human techs to reinforce the Wayfarer's shields. Varel elders shared data with conquered bioscholars. For the first time in centuries, enemies stood side by side. But as they prepared for the final leg to Ceres, Tay cried out in pain. Their body glowed silver. The air around them warped. A crack appeared in the floor, not physical but a tear in space itself leaking cold, silent darkness. Nessa fell to her knees. "The anchor fails," she gasped. "Someone must take the burden, or the seal breaks forever." She looked at the humans, then at the conquered. No one stepped forward. The risk was too great. To carry the entity's echo was to risk madness. Or worse. Then from the back of the room a voice spoke. "I'll do it." It was Rourke. He walked forward, eyes steady. "I've carried heavy things before. One more won't break me." Nessa studied him. "It is not weight. It is memory, pain. You will feel what the Varel felt. You may not survive." Rourke looked at Tay, then at the stars beyond the viewport. "Then I'll make sure it's worth it." In the ship's medical bay, under the watchful eyes of humans, Varel and Concord alike, they began the transfer. Gene therapy injections, neural links, a slow, painful merging of biology and memory. As the process began, Rourke screamed. Not from pain, but from visions. Burning skies, silent screams, the weight of a dying world on his shoulders. But he held on. Outside, the fleet, human, Belt, and Concord, formed a single line. Engines burning toward Ceres. The shelter they sought was no longer just a place. It was a promise. And Rourke would carry that promise even if it cost him everything. Beneath the ice of Ceres, in a dome sealed against the void, humans and Varel worked side by side. The air smelled of warm metal, growing plants, and the sharp tang of ozone from overworked machines. Scientists from Earth, Mars, and even the Conquered pored over data screens trying to understand the strange energy that lived inside Captain Elias Rourke. He sat in the center of the lab, calm, his eyes closed, his skin faintly glowing with silver veins that pulsed like slow heartbeats. The entity was coming, not in ships or armies, but as a wave of wrongness spreading through space itself. Stars flickered and died in its path. Planets fell silent. It fed on thought, on fear, on the very fabric of reality. And only the resonance field, the living seal carried by the Varel, could stop it. But Tay was too young to anchor it. Rourke had taken the burden. Now they had to turn that burden into a weapon. The plan was simple but deadly. They would build a probe, a small, fast ship loaded with a broadcast array. Rourke would go inside it. His body, now tuned to the Varel frequency, would act as the core. When he reached the heart of the entity, he would release the full resonance field. Not to trap it this time, but to erase it. The cost was clear. The energy needed would burn through him. There would be no return. No one asked if he was sure. They saw it in his eyes. He had made his choice the moment he offered shelter to strangers in the dark. Outside the dome, the last of the combined fleet gathered. Human cruisers, Belt gunships, even conquered vessels, their proud sigils now dimmed by loss. They formed a shield around Ceres, not to fight but to buy time. Every minute mattered. Tay stood at the edge of the lab, small hand in Nessa's. The child watched Rourke with eyes too old for their face. They understood what was coming. They had lived it before in dreams and memories not their own. "You do not have to watch," Nessa whispered. Tay shook their head. "He gave us home. I stay." The final hours passed in quiet urgency. Engineers welded the last panels onto the probe, now named the Last Light. Medics ran final checks on Rourke's vitals. He ate a simple meal, bread, fruit, water, and smiled at the young technician who handed it to him. "Tell my family I didn't run," he said softly. Then came the call. The entity had reached the edge of the Sol system. Jupiter's moons went dark. Saturn's ring stilled. The wave of silence rolled toward them like a tide. It was time. Rourke walked to the launch bay without hesitation. Dax met him there, eyes red, jaw tight. He handed Rourke a small worn compass, useless in space but a human thing from Earth. "For luck," Dax said, voice breaking. Rourke tucked it into his suit. "Thanks, friend." He climbed into the last light. The hatch sealed with a hiss. Outside, the dome's great doors opened, revealing the black sky and the waiting stars. The launch was smooth. The probe shot upward, fast and silent, leaving Ceres behind. The fleet parted to let it pass. No cheers, no speeches. Just a shared breath held across 1,000 ships. As the last light flew deeper into the void, Rourke felt the entity's presence grow. It wasn't sound or light, it was absence, a hole where meaning used to be. His mind ached. Memories flickered. His childhood home, his first ship, the drifting Varel vessel in the dark. He held on to them. They were his anchors now. Then he saw it. Not a shape, but a wound in space. Swirling darkness, swallowing light, twisting time. At its edge, stars unraveled like thread. The rift pulsed, hungry. Rourke activated the broadcast array. "This is Captain Elias Rourke of the salvage tug Wayfarer. I carry the seal. I carry the truth. And I say, no more." He opened himself fully. The resonance field erupted from the probe, not as sound but as pure frequency, a song older than stars. It washed over the rift like dawn over night. The darkness screamed, not in sound but in the sudden return of silence breaking. The rift shuddered. Cracks of silver light spread through it. For a moment the void itself seemed to weep. Inside the probe, Rourke's body glowed white-hot. His skin turned to light. His bones sang with the weight of 1,000 lost worlds. He didn't feel pain. He felt purpose, and then peace. The rift collapsed. Not with a bang, but with a sigh. The stars returned. Jupiter's moons flickered back to life. Saturn's rings spun once more. On Ceres, alarms fell silent. People stepped out of shelters, looking up at the sky. Tay closed their eyes and smiled. Nessa placed a hand on the child's shoulder. They both felt it. The seal was whole again, not in one person, but in the memory of what had been done. Back on Haven 7, Marilyn received the final signal from the last light. Just 3 words repeating until the feed faded. "It is done." The conquered ships powered down their weapons. One by one they turned and left, not in shame but in quiet respect. The war was over. The lie was dead. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy changed. The celestial conquered dissolved. New alliances formed, not built on power but on trust. Earth, Mars, the Belt, and even former enemies signed a new pact. No one would be turned away again. The Varel were given land on Mars, red soil under open skies. They built homes from stone and glass. Children played in gardens fed by melted ice. Humans worked beside them, learning their songs, sharing their stories. On a quiet hill overlooking the new settlement, a simple stone marker was placed. No name, no title, just words carved deep into the rock. Here, the galaxy said no. Humans said yes. Years later, Tay, now tall, strong, and calm, would bring visitors to that stone. They would tell the story of the drifting ship, the brave captain, and the shelter that changed everything. But far beyond the rim of known space, in the deepest dark between galaxies, something stirred. Not the entity. Something older. Something that had watched the battle and remembered the song. It did not move. Not yet, but it listened and it waited.